the man who challenged the gods, the truth about Monkey D. Dragon. For years, the world has whispered one name with both awe and fear. Monkey D. Dragon, the most wanted man alive, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, the storm that moves beneath history itself. But in truth, Dragon is much more than a revolutionary. He is the only man who has ever looked directly at the gods of the world and chosen to rebel. This theory explores a possibility that changes everything we think we know about One Piece. That dragon isn't simply fighting the world government. He's fighting the very being that created it. Imu-sama, the ruler of the void, the immortal sovereign who sits upon the empty throne. High voltage, the origins of the dragon. To understand Dragon, we must go back to his past, to the era before the revolution, before the scars of the world became visible. He was once part of the system. A soldier of the Navy, a man who believed in justice. Records confirm that Dragon once served under the Marines, alongside Garp and Sengoku. He was a prodigy, sharp, idealistic, and unshakably devoted to peace. But something happened that changed him forever. One mission, one discovery, one truth that shattered his faith. Cloud, the day Dragon saw the truth. Imagine a young dragon stationed at Merigios, the holy land of the celestial dragons. He walks through the corridors of the so-called heavenly realm, and what he sees is not divinity, but rot. Slavery disguised as order. Suffering disguised as peace. The Marines serving not justice, but God who demands silence. And in the depths of that sacred city, Dragon found something forbidden. A sealed chamber beneath the empty throne. Inside, he saw what no mortal should ever see. A silhouette that cast no shadow, a being who did not breathe, whose presence made even time seem afraid. That was the first time Dragon saw Imu-sama. And in that instant, he understood the truth. The world is not ruled by men. It's ruled by time itself. Hourglass not done, the god of stagnation. Imu is not a ruler in the conventional sense. She is the embodiment of stasis, the will that freezes the flow of history. That's why the world has never changed in 800 years. The same kingdoms rise and fall. The same nobility stays in power. The same lies are told. Imu's existence explains the greatest mystery in the One Piece world. Why the Void Century cannot be remembered. Because time itself was sealed. Imu doesn't merely control the world politically, she binds it temporally. Her presence creates a repeating timeline, a world that lives the same story over and over again, never truly progressing. That's why Roger's laughter mattered. That's why Joy Boy's promise was never fulfilled. Because every time the D rises, Imu resets the world back to silence. Fire Dragon's revelation. After that day, Dragon knew he could never return to the Marines. He couldn't live in a world where truth was forbidden and time was enslaved. He realized that the Navy wasn't serving justice, it was maintaining the cycle. So he vanished. He erased his name from every record, turned his back on the flag of justice, and began building something new. The world saw him as a criminal. But in truth, he was the first man in history to declare war on time. Dragon's goal isn't simply to overthrow the celestial dragons or destroy the world government. It's to restart the flow of history itself. That's what revolution truly means, not rebellion, but rotation. The turning of a wheel that has been frozen for centuries. Gear, the formation of the revolutionaries. When Dragon began his movement, he didn't recruit soldiers. He recruited believers. People who could feel that the world was broken, that something fundamental was missing. People who sensed that time was standing still. Sabo, Ivankov, Koala, they all became part of a system designed not just to fight oppression, but to awaken memory. Each revolutionary base corresponds to a temporal node, a location connected to the ancient energy networks left by the ancient kingdom. Dragon knew that if these nodes could be reactivated, they would restore the world's natural flow and expose the truth Imu buried. That's why the revolutionaries operate everywhere yet belong nowhere. They move like wind and thunder. Because Dragon's true weapon isn't an army, it's momentum. Dashing away the mark of the wind. Dragon's control over the wind has always been a mystery. Many believe it was his devil fruit ability, but what if it's something more symbolic? Wind, in mythology, represents change. It carries time forward. It reshapes landscapes. It cannot be contained. Dragon's wind is not mere weather manipulation. It's the manifestation of his will, his connection to the flow of time. Wherever Dragon appears, storms follow, because reality itself resists him. The world, locked in Imu's stasis, reacts violently to his presence. He doesn't bring chaos, he awakens motion. That's why even nature bends to his resolve. Because Dragon's true ability may not be to control the weather, but to accelerate causality. Crosswords, the fall of faith. After leaving the Navy, Dragon sought one person who could understand the gravity of his discovery, his father, Monkey D. Garp. But Garp, loyal to his sense of duty, refused to listen. He believed justice could exist even within corruption. Dragon knew then that the old world couldn't be reformed. It had to be reborn. He told Garp one final sentence before disappearing. "You serve justice that never moves, Father. I will serve freedom that never stops." From that day forward, they were no longer father and son, but two opposing forces in history. The guardian of order and the bringer of motion. Sunrise, the man who challenged the gods. Dragon's rebellion isn't political, it's metaphysical. He's not fighting kings. He's fighting eternity. And that's why the world government fears him more than any pirate. Because pirates want freedom. But Dragon wants evolution. He's the man trying to restart the clock of the world, to break Imu's infinite cycle and restore the natural rhythm of time. That's why his bounty is infinite. That's why his name is cursed. Because he's the only being alive who could end the age of gods. Dizzy the Foreshadowing. Look closely at every time the story mentions wind or revolution. It's always associated with motion, with turning, with the word kaizoku, the cycle of pirates who keep the world alive. Luffy inherits the will of joy, but Dragon inherits the will of change. Both are needed for the dawn to come. That's why the sky always changes when Dragon appears. He is the herald of transition, the physical rejection of Imu's stillness. And deep inside him burns a fruit older than the void century itself. A fruit that once belonged to the ancient kingdom's timekeepers. The Toki Toki Nomi primeval form. The fruit of time, Dragon's forbidden power. Time has always been the one element that no pirate, no emperor, no god could command. But what if one man, one revolutionary, found a way not to control it, but to set it free? Monkey D. Dragon's greatest weapon is not his army, his intellect, or even his will. It's a power hidden so deeply that the world itself forgot it ever existed. A fruit erased from the records of history, struck from the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia by order of the Five Elders. A fruit older than the world government itself. The Toki Toki Nomi primeval form. Tornado, the legend of the time fruit. Centuries before the void century vanished, the ancient kingdom studied the natural rhythm of the planet, the rise and fall of ages, the heartbeat of the world. They discovered that time was not linear. It moved like the ocean, waves overlapping, moments echoing into each other. From this discovery was born a fruit of impossible potential, a seed that could interact with the current of time itself. It was meant not to dominate history, but to protect its continuity. That fruit disappeared when the ancient kingdom fell. Some say it was destroyed. Others whisper it was swallowed by the wind and reborn in another age. And the one who found it was Dragon. High voltage, the difference between Toki's power and Dragon's. We already know that Kazuki Toki possessed a version of the Toki Toki Nomi. Her ability could send people forward through time, never backward. She moved souls out of danger, but could not rewrite fate. But the fruit Dragon wields is not the same. The primeval form is the original, unbound by the limitations of the modern copy. Instead of transporting bodies, it manipulates flow. Dragon can accelerate, decelerate, or freeze causality within localized fields. He doesn't time travel, he time bends. When he appears on the battlefield and the wind begins to howl, it's not merely weather. It's the sound of the world's clock skipping beats, dashing away the power of momentum. Dragon's symbol has always been the storm, a spiral of air moving endlessly. But the storm is not random. It is rhythm, a perfect metaphor for his fruit. He can slow the air around projectiles, making bullets crawl. He can accelerate the fall of lightning. He can freeze an instant so that every decision fits inside a single heartbeat. This explains how he rescues people who should be impossible to save, how he appeared when Sabo was cornered, how he intercepted fleets that should have reached him first. Dragon isn't omniscient, he's ahead. He lives half a second in the future. Mantelpiece clock, why the world government fears him. Imu-sama's dominance depends on predictability. She controls the timeline like a script, deleting events, erasing kingdoms, ensuring nothing unexpected ever happens. But Dragon's fruit disrupts that script. He introduces variance. Every time he acts, the world's timeline branches, creating ripples that even Imu cannot fully erase. That's why the government hunts him more than any pirate, because his existence breaks their perfect loop. He's the error in eternity. Gear, the temporal network. Dragon doesn't use his fruit recklessly. He channels it through the revolutionary network, a system of ancient devices hidden in the ruins of the old world. Each base of the revolutionary army sits atop a temporal node, remnants of technology from the ancient kingdom that resonate with the world's natural time current. By activating them, Dragon creates zones of restored time, places where the truth resurfaces. That's why the government loses control of records and communications whenever a revolution spreads. It's not sabotage. It's history trying to heal itself. Last quarter moon, Dragon's burden. Manipulating time is not without cost. Every time Dragon slows or accelerates the world, he ages. Not physically, temporally. His existence becomes thinner, his presence harder to perceive. That's why the Navy rarely captures his image clearly. Photographs blur, din mushy distort, reports contradict. Dragon is literally out of sync with reality. He sacrifices his permanence for the sake of progress. The man who brings motion to the world is slowly fading from it. Crystal ball foreshadowing across the manga. Oda has sprinkled clues. The winds that change direction when Dragon appears. The phrase "the world is turning" spoken by characters after his involvement. The repeated imagery of clocks, gears, and storms in revolutionary hideouts. Even the revolutionary flag, the swirling red dragon, mirrors the shape of a time spiral. These aren't coincidences. They are silent confirmations that Dragon's war is a temporal one. High-voltage connection to Shanks. When Dragon intervened to save Shanks, the world believed it was a strategic alliance. But what if it was something deeper? What if Dragon saw that Shanks' death in that moment would trigger a collapse in the timeline, an imbalance that would allow Imu to reset the era once again? Dragon didn't save Shanks out of friendship. He saved the timeline itself. Because for the dawn to arrive, the red-haired emperor had to live long enough to meet the next generation. Fire, the true meaning of revolution. When Dragon speaks of revolution, he doesn't mean rebellion against kings. He means rotation. The revolution of time. The wheel that must keep turning. That's why his army is scattered across the world like clockwork pieces. Each cell moves in rhythm, activating at the precise second needed. They are not just fighters, they are cogs of time. Dragon's leadership is not command, it's synchronization. He aligns people to a single purpose, to make the world move again. Sunrise, the price of knowledge. Knowing the truth of time is the ultimate curse. Dragon carries the memories of timelines that no longer exist, worlds erased by Imu's resets. He remembers futures that never happened, victories that were undone, friends who were never born. That's why he seems distant, almost emotionless. He's not cold. He's exhausted from remembering too much. But despite that pain, he continues, because he knows that one day, someone will appear who can finally break the cycle permanently. And that person is his son. Luffy represents the uncontrollable present, joy incarnate. Dragon represents the conscious future, change personified. Together, they form the key to the world's awakening. The fall of truth, the corruption of the world government. Every revolution begins with a lie. Not the lie told by rebels, but the one told by those in power. And in the world of One Piece, the greatest lie ever told is that the world government protects humanity. For decades, the Navy has spoken of justice, the celestial dragons of divinity, and the five elders of balance. But behind these words lies a truth so rotten that even the gods cannot bear to look at it. And the first man to truly see it was Monkey D. Dragon. Gear, the machinery of control. When Dragon served in the Marines, he was not an ordinary soldier. He was an investigator, one of the youngest officers allowed access to restricted archives. It was during these early years that he began noticing something strange. Patterns that didn't fit, reports that contradicted, and disappearances that were too convenient. Entire islands wiped from history, their names deleted from maps. Citizens reclassified as pirates after refusing to pay tribute to the celestial dragons. And most disturbingly, Marines ordered to destroy evidence rather than protect civilians. He started connecting the dots, and what he found was terrifying. The world government is not a system of justice. It's a factory of silence. Every branch, from the cipher pole to the Marines themselves, exists to maintain the illusion that the world is stable. That illusion is the foundation of Imu's timeline. As long as people believe in justice, no one questions who defines it. Fire the incident that changed everything. There was one mission, one event that turned Dragon from a loyal officer into the most dangerous man alive. It happened on a remote island allied with the world government. The nobles there had enslaved hundreds of civilians, branding them as criminals for refusing higher taxes. Dragon's squad was sent to suppress the rebellion, but when he arrived, he saw no rebellion, only terrified villagers begging for help. He refused the order to fire. He refused to silence the innocent. And for that act of conscience, the Navy branded him a traitor. When he returned to headquarters, he discovered that the official report had been rewritten. The civilians were listed as pirates, the nobles as victims, and Dragon's entire squad men who stood by him were quietly executed. That was the moment he realized. The Navy doesn't serve justice. It serves history as rewritten by the gods. Drop of blood, the birth of the revolutionary. After that day, Dragon vanished from all records. The Navy declared him dead, killed in an unsanctioned mission. But in the shadows of the world, something began to stir. He started gathering people like him, men and women who had seen too much. Doctors who watched diseases used as biological weapons against rebel islands. Scholars who noticed that certain topics could never be published. Civilians who remembered events that no longer existed. All of them shared one thing. They had glimpsed a memory the world wanted them to forget. That was the true birth of the Revolutionary Army. Not as an army of soldiers, but of witnesses. Globe showing Europe, Africa the real reason behind the Great Cleansing. Every few decades, the world government performs what it calls a global purge. Officially, it's to eliminate pirates and maintain order. But Dragon discovered the truth. These purges are temporal resets. When too many people begin to remember forbidden history, when too many islands question the government's narrative, Imu resets the timeline through mass destruction, erasing evidence of rebellion and adjusting reality to maintain stability. The Buster Call isn't just a military weapon. It's a ritual. Dragon realized that if Imu controlled time, then every revolution before his had already happened and been erased. That's why he calls his army the Revolutionaries. Because they're not starting a new war. They're finishing the ones that were forgotten. Change the truth about the celestial dragons. The celestial dragons are not gods. They are anchors. Living conduits used by Imu to maintain her hold on the material world. Each of them carries fragments of her temporal energy. That's why they are untouchable, why their deaths are forbidden, and why even the 5 elders kneel to them. Dragon understood that killing the celestial dragons was not enough. He had to sever their connection to time itself. That's why the Revolutionary Army doesn't attack blindly. Their operations are precise, targeting not power, but influence. Each successful mission removes one thread of Imu's web. The world thinks Dragon is creating chaos. But in truth, he's dismantling the architecture of eternity, dashing away the message of the wind. Every time Dragon appears, the wind changes direction. It's as if the planet itself exhales. This isn't poetic symbolism. It's the world reacting to his influence. When Imu resets history, the air becomes stagnant. The seasons stop moving. Progress halts. But when Dragon's presence ripples across the world, time breathes again. He brings movement back into the lungs of the planet. That's why his symbol, the swirling dragon, isn't just a logo. It's a clock turning once more. Puzzle piece, the secret of O'Hara. When Dragon learned of O'Hara's destruction, he didn't see it as tragedy. He saw it as confirmation. The scholars of O'Hara were not simply historians. They were temporal scientists. They discovered the patterns of time manipulation in the Void Centuries records. That's why Imu ordered their extermination. But one thing Imu didn't expect was that Dragon had already met Professor Clover years before. Clover had warned him that the true power of the government wasn't political, it was metaphysical. When O'Hara burned, Dragon didn't mourn. He vowed that their knowledge would not die again. And from that fire, the true revolution began. Crosswords, the fall of faith. Dragon's break with the Marines caused a shockwave throughout the world. Garp tried to protect his son, but even he couldn't defy the will of the elders. For the first time, the Navy realized that one of their own had turned against the system, not for greed, but for truth. Dragon's name was erased, his image destroyed, his past rewritten. But Imu made one mistake. She forgot that even erased memories leave echoes. The whispers of the wind that turned against heaven began to spread, and the people, for the first time in centuries, started to wonder if the gods could bleed. High voltage, the philosophy of the revolution. To the Revolutionary Army, justice is not about punishing evil. It's about freeing truth. They don't seek to destroy the world, they seek to let it move. Because Dragon believes that every lie is a chain, and every truth is a step forward in time. That's why his war is not fought with hatred, but with patience. He doesn't fight to win, he fights to continue. Because every action, no matter how small, keeps the world spinning, and that is enough to weaken Imu's grip. Sunrise, the fall of truth. By the end of this part of the story, Dragon's becomes something far greater than a revolutionary. He becomes a historian of motion, a man who remembers what others forget, who restores what was deleted, who breathes life into time itself. His enemies see him as chaos. But chaos is only order rediscovered. Dragon's greatest strength is not his power, but his understanding. He knows that to defeat Imu, one must not destroy the world, but allow it to move freely once more. That is the ultimate revolution. Not against kings, not against gods, but against stagnation itself. The hidden war, the true purpose of the revolution. The world believes the Revolutionary Army is a political force, a rebellion against kings and nobles. But that's only the surface. Because what Dragon created is not a rebellion. It's a reset. The revolutionaries aren't fighting to replace the world government. They're fighting to unfreeze it, to restart the natural flow of time that Imu has stopped for 800 years. Their true purpose is not destruction. It's liberation, not of people, but of causality itself. Gear, the structure of the hidden army. Dragon's army is unlike any military in history. It's not built around rank, hierarchy, or conquest. It's built around frequency. Each revolutionary base operates as a resonance point, aligned with the planet's natural temporal frequency. That's why their hideouts appear and vanish. They aren't teleporting, they're shifting alignment. Dragon uses the primeval time fruit to keep every base in sync across the world. When one node acts, the others move instinctively, like clock gears turning in harmony. The Marines can't track them because they don't exist in a single moment. They exist in many moments at once. Windface, the Wind Network. At the core of this system lies what Dragon calls the Wind Network, a flow of temporal energy that circles the planet like a jet stream of time. This is the true reason behind the massive whirlpools, storms, and unpredictable weather patterns in the New World. The world believes the seas are chaotic. But they're not. They're alive. Dragon's fruit interacts with this natural rhythm, allowing him to communicate with his commanders through atmospheric shifts. A gust in Baltigo could carry a coded message to Kamabaka Island within seconds. Not through sound, but through time resonance. Every gust of wind is a whisper between rebels, a secret language that the gods cannot hear. Fire, the pillars of the revolution. Each of Dragon's top commanders represents one aspect of time. Their missions are not random. They correspond to maintaining the flow of history in specific ways. Sabo, of the present flame. He represents the will of now, burning against stagnation, protecting the spark of life and choice. His battles always happen at the heart of conflict, symbolizing the struggle to keep the present alive. Ivankov, the future that changes. Through transformation and evolution, Ivankov embodies adaptability, the ability of time to alter itself. His hormone powers aren't just biological, they represent potential. Kala, the memory of the past. the keeper of trauma and history. Koala's missions focus on freeing slaves, restoring what was lost, and ensuring the world never forgets the cost of stillness. Together, they form Dragon's triad: past, present, future. Their synchronization keeps the world's motion alive while Dragon anchors the flow through his primeval fruit. Mantelpiece clock, the hidden symbolism. The revolutionary flag, the red spiral of the dragon, is not random. It's a temporal vortex, the point where time begins to rotate again after centuries of being frozen. Each swirl represents one phase of the revolution. Recognition, knowing the truth. Resonance, aligning the will. Release, breaking the cycle. When the symbol is raised in a new land, that region's timeline reawakens. That's why revolutions spread like wildfire. Because they're not merely social movements, they're time events. Dizzy the Forgotten Allies. The revolutionaries aren't alone. Dragon discovered remnants of ancient technology scattered through the Grand Line, relics left by the ancient kingdom before it fell. They are not weapons, they are anchors. Anchors designed to stabilize the planet's temporal field when the gods tried to erase it. Dragon reactivated these devices, allowing certain islands to resist Imu's resets. That's why nations like Elbaf, Baltigo, and parts of the New World seem to remember things others forget. They exist outside Imu's loop, protected by Dragon's influence. The government calls them rebellious zones. But the truth is simpler. They are free. Crosswords, the first phase, the silent revolution. Dragon knows that to defeat Imu, brute force means nothing. He must weaken her grip on history before confronting her directly. That's why his first phase, the silent revolution, focuses on destabilizing belief. Every government depends on faith, the faith of its citizens that the system works. Dragon doesn't attack cities. He attacks certainty. He leaks forgotten truths, exposes erased massacres, reveals contradictions between history and memory. He lets the people question the timeline themselves. Because when faith cracks, time begins to flow again. Crystal Ball, the philosophy of change. Dragon's doctrine teaches one thing above all. Nothing remains still, not even truth. This is the ultimate heresy against Imu, whose power depends on eternal order. To Imu, movement equals chaos. To Dragon, chaos equals life. That's why he encourages his followers to act freely, without rigid commands. The revolution isn't an army obeying a king. It's a living organism. It learns, adapts, and changes shape as needed. Where Imu demands obedience, Dragon cultivates unpredictability. Where Imu creates gods, Dragon creates possibility. Last quarter moon, the clash of faiths. Imu's priests, the five elders, view Dragon's army as disease. They call him the wind of ruin. But Dragon knows the truth. Every god fears the wind because it erodes the stone of eternity. That's why the elders always move to suppress news of him. Not just to hide his actions, but to keep the world still. Because knowledge moves faster than armies. And the moment people believe that change is possible, the timeline begins to shift. That belief is Dragon's strongest weapon. Dove, the unseen victories. Every revolution he sparks, every kingdom that falls, every noble dethroned, it all creates momentum. But what the world doesn't realize is that Dragon has already won small victories in places no one remembers. Islands erased from the records now exist again in fragments of old maps. Lost people reappearing in genealogies. Ancient symbols resurfacing on ruins once thought destroyed. These aren't coincidences. They are temporal scars, signs that the timeline is healing itself. Each one proves that Dragon's war is working. Cyclone, the true goal. What is the end game? To awaken the world completely, to make it remember everything. When the revolution reaches its final phase, all forgotten events, the Void Century, the Ancient Kingdom, Joy Boy's failure, will resurface simultaneously. Time will collapse into the present. Past and future will merge. And at that moment, Imu will lose control forever. Because you cannot manipulate a timeline that refuses to forget. That's what Dragon calls the dawn of time. The time of liberation, Dragon versus Imu. Every era has a storm that cannot be stopped. A storm that doesn't destroy, but awakens. And in the world of One Piece, that storm has a name, Monkey D. Dragon. For decades, he moved like a ghost across the seas. Invisible, whispered, feared. But the time for shadows is over. Because even the wind must face the sky that trapped it. And the sky's name is Imu. New Moon, the unseen throne. At the heart of the world lies the Pangea Castle, a fortress so ancient that even the five elders call it sacred. Deep beneath its foundations sits the empty throne, a seat that supposedly belongs to no one. But Dragon knew the truth. Someone was always sitting there. Imu, the eternal ruler, the god of stagnation. For 800 years, she watched the world through mirrors of history, controlling time like a puppeteer, resetting events, erasing kings, deleting centuries. But one day, she felt something she had not felt since the fall of the ancient kingdom: resistance. A wind that refused to bow. A current of time that flowed against her will. A single heartbeat echoing out of sync with eternity. That heartbeat was Dragon. Hourglass not done the moment time stopped. When the final phase of the revolution began, the world trembled. Storms formed across every sea. The magnetic fields of the Grand Line went berserk. The eternal poses shattered one by one. And in the eye of that chaos stood Dragon, cape torn, eyes glowing faintly with golden light, his aura bending the air itself. He raised his hand toward the heavens and whispered, "Let the world move again." And the impossible happened. Time stopped. Not for the world, but for the gods. For the first time in 8 centuries, Imu's cycle faltered. The eternal throne cracked. The celestial dragons fell to their knees, their divine bodies aging in seconds. The 5 elders shouted in terror as they realized what was happening. Dragon wasn't freezing time. He was reclaiming it. Dizzy the battle beyond time. Imu emerged from the darkness, her form shimmering like a mirage. Neither man nor woman, neither light nor shadow, the embodiment of stillness itself. Every step she took erased sound, erased motion, erased meaning. But Dragon didn't move. He simply stood, eyes locked onto her, his wind swirling in slow, infinite loops around him. The air itself bowed to their presence. Imu, you defy eternity? Dragon, no. I free it. And the battlefield became something the world could never see, a realm where time was no longer linear. Every strike, every thought, every breath happened across multiple moments at once. The floor of the throne room shattered and reformed endlessly. Reality bent between stillness and motion, caught between God and storm. Fire the clash of wills. Imu's power was absolute silence, the ability to erase existence from the timeline. She could turn any object, person, or memory into nothingness. She reached for Dragon, her hand cutting through the air like a void, and where her fingers passed, even light ceased to exist. But Dragon's power was momentum. Every gust of his wind carried not destruction, but continuity. When Imu erased, Dragon restored. When she silenced, he echoed. Their battle was not about strength, it was about philosophy. Imu sought to preserve the world by stopping it. Dragon sought to protect it by letting it move. Every collision between them created paradoxes, fragments of reality that looped endlessly, like broken film reels. The throne room became a storm of memories, past and future blending until even the gods forgot what moment they stood in. Gear, the revolution in the sky. Outside, the world saw signs of the impossible. The sun rose and set 3 times in a single hour. Islands appeared and vanished. Ancient symbols glowed on the ocean floor. The revolutionaries across the world felt time itself expanding, a rhythm pulsing through the air like drums. The drums of liberation. For the first time, Dragon's rhythm aligned with another, his son's. Luffy's heart, beating in the same pattern, across the seas, across time itself. The will of D resonated through blood and memory, uniting father and son without words. Imu felt it. A vibration beyond her control. A future she couldn't predict. The sound of freedom, echoing through the timeline she once owned. And in that moment, she realized what she was fighting wasn't a man. It was the future itself, dashing away the power of the paradox. Dragon's final ability, the core of the primeval fruit, was revealed. He could create temporal paradoxes, events that contradict Imu's resets. By aligning multiple futures together, he made outcomes Imu couldn't delete. When Imu tried to erase him, Dragon split his existence across time. One version fighting her in the present, another spreading the revolution's momentum across centuries past and future. Every time she erased one, another reappeared, drawn from another possible outcome. Dragon became infinite motion. Imu screamed, not in rage, but in fear, as she felt something she had never felt before: inevitability. Dove, the liberation of time. The climax of their battle shattered the throne room. Light and darkness spiraled upward, piercing the clouds, spreading across the seas. Every revolutionary, every pirate, every marine felt the world shake, not from destruction, but from release. The magnetic field stabilized. The eternal poses recalibrated. The calm belts broke apart. The seas began to breathe again. Dragon stood before Imu, his body flickering between moments. He was fading. Every second spent accelerating time burned his existence away. But he smiled. "You taught the world to fear change. I'll teach it to love it." He extended his hand, and wind burst through the palace, tearing the flags of the celestial dragons from their poles. The wind carried their screams away, scattering their symbols like dust in the air. Time moved again. Bell the fall of the eternal throne. When the storm ended, there was no palace, only ruins and light. The empty throne stood broken in half, one side illuminated by sunlight, the other engulfed in shadow. Imu was gone. Whether destroyed or finally freed, no one knew. But in the silence that followed, the world heard something else. The sound of breathing. The world had begun to live again. Sunrise, the legacy of the wind. Dragon's body was never found. Some say he was erased. Others believe he became the wind itself, a consciousness carried through the ages, guiding the next revolution, whispering in every storm. But one thing is certain. The world began to remember. The void century resurfaced. History moved again. And for the first time in 800 years, the sky above Pangaea Castle turned blue. The dawn of time, the final revolution. When the storm faded, the world was no longer the same. The seas had stopped raging, the sky had turned clear, and for the first time in 800 years, the sun rose on its own. No manipulation, no divine will, no correction from the gods. Just dawn, natural, unforced, alive. The age of stagnation had ended. The dawn of time had begun. Globe showing Europe, Africa, the world after Imu. Without Imu, the center of the world crumbled. The red line cracked, the clouds above Mary Geos vanished, and the eternal throne, the symbol of control, lay in ruins. But the world didn't fall into chaos. It began to move. Nations long oppressed by the celestial dragons declared independence, not through war, but through remembrance. People began finding traces of history in places where there should have been none: murals, writings, and names erased for centuries returning like echoes through time. The forgotten past had come home. Every sea, every island, every current of wind seemed to flow differently. It was as if the world itself remembered how to breathe. Gear, the revolutionaries' legacy. The revolutionary army no longer needed to fight. Their victory was not in conquest, but in continuity. The wind network that Dragon built still functioned, the temporal resonance that connected his people across the planet. Even without him, the system he created kept guiding nations into synchronization. The world's timeline was no longer fragmented. It was whole. Ivankov called it the second heartbeat of the world. Koala called it the rhythm of freedom. But Sabo, standing before the ruins of Pangaea Castle, said something no one ever forgot. This wind still carries his voice. From that day, the revolutionaries changed their flag. The red spiral of dragon became a golden one, symbolizing motion without beginning or end. The revolution was complete. Not because they won, but because the world had finally remembered how to move by itself. Dove, the return of the forgotten. As time began to heal, islands erased by Imu's resets reappeared. Ancient ruins emerged from beneath the seas. The long-lost nations of the Void Century flickered back into existence, not as physical empires, but as memory fields, echoes of the world that once was. Even the poneglyphs, once indecipherable, began glowing with light, their text finally legible to anyone who remembered the rhythm of the old world. Knowledge no longer needed translation. It was felt. And among the newly restored islands, one shone brighter than the rest. Raftel. The true end of time, the island Joy Boy had once reached. But now it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. High voltage, the reappearance of Dragon. There are stories that say Dragon died in the throne room that day, but others whisper something different. When the final light burst from the ruins of Pangaea, the wind itself began to speak. Sailors reported hearing a voice in the gusts. Revolutionaries in distant lands felt their clocks shift slightly backward, as if time itself paused to listen. And then they heard a phrase echo across the planet. Time belongs to no one. Let it move. That was the last message of Monkey D. Dragon. And from that day on, every storm carried his whisper. Every breeze reminded the world of his promise. Dragon didn't die. He became what he always was, the wind of time. Fire, the reunion of wills. Far across the seas, Luffy, now grown, his smile unchanged, felt the world pulse. The drums of liberation beat once again. He looked to the sky and laughed, knowing exactly what it meant. His father's revolution had not ended in death. It had ended in continuity. Dragon freed the world's timeline, and Luffy freed its soul. The will of D had finally united. Dragon, the man of the future, who freed time. Luffy, the man of the present, who freed the heart. Joel D. Roger, the man of the past, who freed truth. Together, across generations, they completed the circle. The will of D wasn't a name. It was a rhythm, a pattern that reappears every time the world tries to stop moving. Sunrise, the meaning of the will of D. For centuries, scholars argued what the D stood for. Danger, dream, dawn. But now the truth was clear. The D stands for drift. The eternal current that carries existence forward, unpredictable, unstoppable, alive. Those who bear the D are fragments of that current, souls born to ensure the world never stops flowing. They are not rebels or saviors. They are the immune system of time. Whenever the world freezes, a D is born to make it move again. Dizzy, the true One Piece. When Luffy finally returned to Raftel, now restored to its ancient form, he found not gold, not weapons, not knowledge, but a single stone tablet with one line written across it. When the world remembers, laughter will be eternal. The One Piece was never a treasure. It was the connection of time itself. A metaphysical link, the bond of joy that transcends centuries, uniting every generation that ever dreamed of freedom. Joy Boy's laughter. Roger's laughter. Luffy's laughter. All the same sound. All the same will. That was the treasure, the world's memory of joy. Globe showing America as the age of motion. The years that followed became known as the age of motion. An era where time flowed freely, ungoverned by gods, unmeasured by kings. Nations changed, merged, evolved. The seas calmed. The sky remained blue. And people stopped fearing the unknown because they finally understood that uncertainty is the price of freedom. No one ruled this world. No one owned time. The world belonged to itself. And every now and then, when the wind blew through the trees, children swore they could hear laughter riding the breeze, a deep, familiar laugh that made their hearts lighter. A laugh that carried both the storm and the sun. The laugh of the man who freed time. Cyclone conclusion of the Dragon Saga. Monkey D. Dragon's revolution was not a war of men against gods. It was the war of time against stillness. And though his body vanished, his legacy became the rhythm of the world. He proved that even eternity could change if one man dared to move against it. That is the true meaning of revolution. Not rebellion. Rotation. The turning of the cosmic wheel, the heartbeat of existence itself. The moment the wind rose, the gods fell. And the world began to live again. The storm that freed time. The wind that outlived the gods. His name was Monkey D. Dragon. The man who made the world remember how to move. And that was the final revolution. I'm Mr. Peace, and I'll see you in the next video.